This is 9/11 Freefall.
Happy holidays, everybody. Welcome to the special Christmas Eve edition of 9/11 Freefall. I'm your host, Andy Steele. The guest tonight is Jim Swartz. He's the local action group regional coordinator for the Great Lakes region for AE 9/11 Truth. He's going to be talking about some of his own activism in that area of the country, talking about the 9/11 Truth issue and movement from his eyes, and of course some of those things that we can do collectively as a movement to shine a spotlight on this important issue and get justice for the people who died on that terrible day. So I'll be playing the interview for you later on in the hour. Right now we're going to do what we do every week. We're going to take 10 seconds of silence to remember the victims of 9/11 and their families and all the people who died in the wars that followed 9/11. We're going to do that starting now. And that's 10 seconds.
The mistletoe hung in the castle hall, the holly branch hung on the old oak wall, the barons retainers were blithe and gay, and keeping their Christmas holiday. Oh, the mistletoe bough, oh, the mistletoe bough.
So here we go, another Christmas is here, and I hope everybody's happy and safe. Hope everybody is enjoying themselves this evening. I'm not sure how many people I have listening to the very first broadcast that plays on No Lies Radio, since it is Christmas Eve. But if you are listening out there tonight, hope you're having a good time. I'm actually recording this a week before Christmas because I'm going to be going down the Southwest to visit my mother for Christmas. Here I am now in the Bay Area, and I am just blown away by how cold it gets in California. Now, I don't know if I was just ignorant. I guess I was, seeing images of California on TV and seeing Hollywood people standing in front of sandy beaches and talking about it like it's 70 degrees all year around. That was the image I got of California, but hey, it's darn cold here in the north. At least I'm not dealing with snow. Don't like snow. So, there you go. A few weeks ago, there was an article put out by Alex Beam of the Boston Globe. Essentially a hit piece attacking Richard Gage and AE 9/11 Truth. Just some of the same typical stuff that we've dealt with over the years. But Richard Gage didn't take that laying down. He got up and he fought back, and the result was his letter to the editor was published on the Boston Globe site here on December 4th, 2015. And it's gotten a lot of play, a lot of responses, a lot of people excited, and I think it's a great rebuttal. I'll go over it with you. Title is, Evidence Still Raises Questions Over World Trade Center Collapses. And it begins, Alex Beam's portrayal of architect truthers is yet another disappointing example of a journalist resorting to ad hominem attacks and avoiding the facts when discussing the destruction of the 3 World Trade Center skyscrapers on September 11th, 2001. Sadly, not one sentence of Beam's column examines the evidence for or against the controlled demolition of the Twin Towers in World Trade Center Building 7. Instead, he devotes 600 words to revealing his own ill-founded bias. He cherry-picks the appearance of the 3 non-experts from the 15-minute video, Architects and Engineers Solving the Mystery of Building 7, but doesn't highlight any of the film's various experts. Noting that some Americans think that what happened that day hasn't been fully explained, he declares, I don't agree, but gives no evidence-based reason for disagreeing. His position rests on his revulsion at the idea that someone, our own government he supposes, consciously demolished the World Trade Center. As building professionals, we architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth try not to let personal feelings interfere with investigating the 3 worst structural failures in modern history. Nearly 2,400 architects and engineers, is actually over that amount now, folks, not including the 109 who signed our petition at the recent annual trade show, ABX, have joined us because we stick to science. The physical evidence shows that scattered office fires could not have caused the 47-story World Trade Center 7 to collapse symmetrically into its footprint. It's got parentheses. Imagine Boston's 52-story Prudential Tower completely collapsing in 7 seconds from small fires. It's hard to, isn't it? The evidence also shows that the Twin Towers were not leveled by the airplane impacts and ensuing fires. The implications are indeed far-reaching, and that is why we urge people to study all the evidence before reaching a conclusion. Couldn't have said it better myself. So congratulations to Richard for getting that published. But this is how you do it. This is how you defeat the darkness, by shining a light on it. And it's not just the light of being positive. You know, I'm not Glenn Beck here telling you that to solve America's problems, you need to watch Mary Poppins with your children. All right? That's not what I'm getting at all. I'm talking about being positive, being hopeful, knowing you're going to win, and simply pointing out the flaws in the other side's arguments. And it's not that hard to do with Alex Beam. I mean, Alex Beam really did a shoddy job here of attacking us. To the Boston Globe's credit, and to some real class acts there at the Boston Globe, not Alex Beam, but others, this was able to be put out. And that's why you should be hopeful. Again, these people that you see in the media, writing the articles, on TV, these frontmen, don't necessarily represent the entirety of these media outlets that you are putting this information out. All right, all of these things, organizations, any entity, even like AE 9/11 Truth, is made up of individuals, different people who can be reached out to, who you can make these cases to. So it's not all bad. Now, Alex Beam may or may not be happy that this was published, rebutting and refuting him, but he's not the Boston Globe. He doesn't make those decisions. So he can like it or lump it. So kudos to the Boston Globe for letting Richard be able to get his 2 cents in on this issue. And that's why we need more volunteers out there doing this exact same thing. We need more people getting the word out, writing things like an editorial, letter to the editor, like Richard Gage did, and sending it to your local papers. I mean, folks, it's not that hard. As long as you avoid speculation, if you just stick to the science, it's hard for them to tell you no. They essentially have to admit to you that they are censoring you. They can't refute your argument. They can't say you're wrong. They will just say, well, it's controversial, and yeah, we got to worry about the bottom line. And there's a form of victory in that, too, because it exposes the problem. All right, it makes the system roll over and show its belly to you. From what I see, a lot of what keeps people silent is peer pressure and fear. You know, fear of losing some kind of status, fear of losing what you have. And I think that what we need in this country, and this kind of goes back to Christmas, is a new standard of normalcy. You know, some people get miserable around the holiday season because they don't like their current situation. They feel like they're behind in some way. You know, it's like we're constantly on a treadmill trying to keep up with some standard, like we've got some hidden judge watching us, you know, saying that we're not living life like we should be, that we're not where we ought to be right now, that we should have more, that we shouldn't be living in a little studio apartment, we should have something bigger, we should be further ahead in our career. All right, these are the same thoughts that keep people silent when the right thing to do comes up, and they don't want to speak out about it because they don't want to lose that career. They don't want to be set back. They don't want to be put in that studio apartment. They don't want to be seen as a nobody. And so these people running on the treadmills, basing everything off their career and their title, basing their whole existence off of that, you know, they're not strong. They're pretty weak because they need those things. That's how they can keep them from wanting to look into it. That's how they keep them looking the other way, because they're afraid of losing some status, money, fame, whatever. Even if they've already saved enough money, even if they, have already made their name in society, they're still afraid of losing that stature, of being Carrie led up onto the stage and having that pig's blood dumped on them, metaphorically speaking, of course. All right, but what happens when you're not worried about that? What happens when you lose all of that? Well, then you're a weapon. Then there's no control over you. The chains are off. Then you're more powerful. So that's what I'm proposing. I have friends, like I said, really great friends, who may not have a lot in life, but they enjoy the simple things. If you have a job and you can afford to take care of your kids and you can afford to buy some Christmas presents at this time of the year, you can bake cookies with them, you can go see a movie every once in a while, you can get a pizza on Friday night, get some beer on Saturday night. As long as you can afford to do these basic things, what else do you want? There is a poem by Percy Bysshe Shelley, and I'm so glad that I got into this stream of thought tonight, because I'm going to read it to you, and I used to read this or send out a video of it around Christmas time. It's called Ozymandias. I met a traveler from an antique land who said, 2 vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read, which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things. The hand that mocked them, and the heart that fed, and on the pedestal these words appear. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sand stretch far away.
My name is Leroy Halsey. I'm a forensic engineer and a professor at the University of Alaska Fairbanks.
Steel is a very fire-resistant material.
When a structure fails, my job is to figure out why. Over the next year, with a team of PhD students, I will be rebuilding World Trade Center Building 7.
How does floor 13 respond with respect to 12?
Using the same drawings that were used to build it originally, we will reconstruct it virtually. Our goal is to figure out why it collapsed late in the afternoon on September 11, 2001, even though it was not hit by an airplane. The investigation conducted by the National Institute of Standards and Technology concluded
what we found was that uncontrolled building fires caused an extraordinary event. The collapse of World Trade Center 7 was primarily due to fires.
Our investigation will evaluate the probability that this was the cause of the collapse. We are making this study open and transparent. Whether you are a physicist, engineer, architect, fire expert, or a specialist in another field, or just an ordinary citizen, we want your participation. We are making all of our data available online. Every aspect of our process regarding the modeling will be shared. And we will be giving regular updates from the lab as we continue our work. Join us in getting to the bottom of why World Trade Center 7 collapsed on September 11th, 2001.
The views expressed on this show by guests and the host on issues outside of the 9/11 controlled demolition evidence are the opinions of those individuals alone and do not necessarily reflect those of architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth.
Jim Swartz is a general contractor, custom home builder with a background in structural framing. He lives north of Chicago, Illinois. He's the Great Lakes Regional Coordinator for AE 9/11 Truth. He's got a lot of good ideas and a lot of heart, and it's an honor to introduce him to all of you in the audience today. Jim, welcome to 9/11 Freefall.
Andy, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm a big fan.
Thank you, and I'm a big fan of you. I know that you've put yourself into a lot of the projects here going on. You're doing a great job with the local action groups, and we've been sort of doing a tour of the United States here with all of our guests, highlighting these local action group leaders and regional coordinators and folks that are out there making the phone calls and growing that base. So I guess we're stopping in Chicago tonight, and it's a great place too. I've been in it briefly. Actually, right before 9/11, I passed through O'Hare Airport on my way back from China. So that's about my experience with Chicago, but I saw a lot of it flying in, and it's a beautiful skyline. So before we get into 9/11, just give us a little bit more information about yourself. Tell us a little bit more about your background.
Well, like you said, I'm structural framing background. I was a carpenter for years, building custom homes all over Illinois and Florida, actually. I started my own business building custom homes in 2002 and had a pretty good run for the most part. I love what I do, and that's really about it. I don't know what else to say in regards to that.
Well, hey, you are somebody that knows how things are built, and even if it's not high-rise structures, you got an idea of what goes into putting up a structure itself. So you have a building background, and you certainly have an opinion to add to this debate. How did you wake up to the 9/11 controlled demolition evidence? What made you start doing something about it?
Well, I first started entering the realm of the rabbit hole, as we call it, in the truth movement, through a book called Creature from Jekyll Island, written by G. Edward Griffin. And it talked all about the central banking system and how we live under central banks and the fiat currency and all the money manipulation that goes on in the world. And that kind of led me to other things. And I found Architects and Engineers 9/11 Truth. And I did a lot of research on 9/11, but I found that Architects and Engineers really had it down to the science, and they didn't go off on speculation and other tangents. So I thought, if I'm going to support something, I'm going to do it with an organization that does it from a factual, scientific basis.
That's right. That's the best way to go. I advocate that every week here on the show because it's really hard to argue with the reasonable stance that we put forth. I mean, simply looking for a new investigation into what was the biggest mass murder in U.S. history, not even the entire event, simply looking into why these 3 buildings came down in New York. I mean, it should not have happened. It was an unprecedented event, especially with Building 7, which wasn't even hit by an airplane. All right, something like this should be studied by architects and engineers worldwide. I mean, it should be included in college curriculum for people wanting to build these buildings in the future. But instead, what do we have? We have architects and engineers largely not even knowing that this building existed, having it just falling to the dustbin of history where it would have resided had architects and engineers from 9/11 Truth not put so much focus on it over the years. Thanks to our efforts and efforts like people like yourself, more people know about Building 7, and more are going to continue to learn about it. What did you consider to be the strongest piece of evidence?
Well, I think Building 7 obviously is what a lot of people call the smoking gun, and not so much the building coming down a free fall. It's the fact that not many people know about it. And when I first started researching 9/11, I found out about Building 7 for the first time. I was surprised I had never heard of it. I started approaching people in grocery stores and, at the bar or restaurants or whatever, and just asking people, have you ever heard of Building 7? And I got to say, it was like 90% of people had never heard of it. And so I questioned that almost as much as the fact that the building just comes down in just under 7 seconds. And when I joined Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, I still had some doubts about, is this really real? Could 80% of America just be completely asleep and not have any idea what's going on with 9/11? And in fact, these buildings look like they were controlled demolitions. So I went to the conference, AIA conference in Chicago. I got to meet Richard Gage for the first time and in person, and just what a great guy he is, and all the people that were volunteering at the booth at the AIA convention. And so we were walking around asking architects and engineers to sign our petition. I approached this engineer. He had a badge on it that says AIA or engineer, whatever. And I asked him, I had 3 questions. I said, do you remember where you were on 9/11? He says, oh, yeah, I was getting ready for work and saw it on TV. And I said, well, what's the first word you think of when you hear 9/11? He says, well, a tragic event. And I said, okay, well, 3rd question, do you know about Building 7? And he says, oh, yeah, I know all about Building 7. I said, well, what do you mean you know all about it? He says, well, I know it was a controlled demolition. And I said, oh, excellent. That means you'll sign my petition. He says, no, I can't sign your petition. I said, well, what do you mean you can't sign my petition? You just said you know it's a controlled demolition. And he said, well, I work for a giant engineering firm, and we just finished the NSA building out in Salt Lake City. And if I were to sign your petition and my company would find out about it, I could probably lose my job. And he just smiled at me and said, keep up the good work, and walked away. And to me, if there was any doubt in my mind about 9/11 and 9/11 truth and the destruction of the buildings, that pretty much sealed it.
Wow. I've heard those stories before. I know this is the reality, but where somebody just very openly admits it, that they can't sign it because they're afraid of losing money or prestige or whatever. They just completed the NSA building. God forbid they do exercise their patriotic duty by signing the petition and using their First Amendment to question the obvious false story we've been given by the government. We get this question so many times. Why don't we have more architects and engineers who've signed the petition? Well, one aspect, we have a lot of people who still don't know about the buildings and all the controversy surrounding it, don't know about the evidence. The person you spoke to obviously had already heard about it, but he's afraid. He's afraid of losing money as a result. Last time I was, or when we had Mikey Smith on this show, actually not Mikey Smith, I'm sorry, Niels Harrit. I'm confusing things that I've seen, but there was a video with Niels Harrit in which he talked about how people, after they retire, are more willing to speak out about this because they have nothing to lose. They have nothing to lose by telling the truth. Well, we need to change this. We need to change our standard of what is important in this world, whether or not having the biggest house or the best car or the most fame and prestige is the most important thing, or whether or not doing the right thing is the most important thing, even if it means losing everything. And a lot of people have had the courage to do this during their careers, and the sky hasn't fallen on them. Some people have had some issues from speaking out about it. People like Stephen Jones, who essentially was, believe he had to early retire as a result. But this is the situation we're finding ourselves in. This is like some kind of science fiction movie or something like that, where it's set in a time in which telling the truth about an important matter will cause people to potentially be discriminated against. It's like a movie script, but it is the real world. And I guess this has been the case throughout all of history on various issues. This is our issue now today. So, Jim, I told everybody in the beginning that you're the regional coordinator for Great Lakes region. Tell us about your local organizing. Bare bones, what are some of the things that you and your people do out there?
Well, the project is relatively new. We've only been working on it for a few months now, and but basically what the goal is to reach out to all the petition signers and just find out if they're available to help out in any way they can. We have a list of or a multitude of things that they can get involved with. contacting the media, getting media exposure, possibly calling into talk shows or radio shows, getting involved with blogs or, getting on comment boards, getting on editorial press advisories, doing any kind of communications that, can just get the word out there. And, beyond that, we urge them to call their senators and congressmen to try to get these 28 pages declassified. If they don't have time to physically help out, we urge them to donate money to things like the WTC-7 evaluation that just recently started at the University of Alaska, Fairbanks. So, we've got tons and tons of things to do. Like you always say on your show, I do hear you say this a lot, is just doing the small things. Is, if it's just a tiny little thing, just do it. And the good news is we are reaching a lot of people that are absolutely interested in helping out. I'm feeling like this surge of interest in people getting involved. So I don't know if it's some sort of 7-year itch or whatever, but it's definitely happening.
Well, there's a lot going on in 9/11 Truth, too. I mean, we got the Beyond Misinformation booklet printed. That's something new that people can pass around, can even give it away here in the holiday season to other people. And it's a very exciting thing. A lot of people are buying it. It's an opportunity for people to sit down and read this at their own pace in the midst of doing other things. You don't got to pop a DVD into the DVD player and sit through a movie. You can just read at your own leisure. Now we got this WTC-7 study going on, like you said, and this is going to be a game changer. I think this is something that I know this is something that the supporters have been asking for years, and I think this is what the other side is afraid of, because once we have this information out there and it's going to be fully transparent, the audience, the supporters out there can participate in the analysis, give their input on it. NIST is going to be forced to either acknowledge it or, if they criticize it, at least ours is open and transparent. Why don't they release their data? All right, who are you going to believe? Are you going to believe the people whose analysis is open and you can check their work, or are you going to believe the people whose analysis is kept behind a glass, or not even a glass box, a metal lead box, because they're worried about it jeopardizing public safety if they release it? So there's a lot of things to be excited about out there in the world and for 9/11 Truth. We just need volunteers doing the kind of stuff that you and your troop are doing in the Great Lakes region. It's calling people, doing those small things well every day to get the word out, sending the Beyond Misinformation booklets out, forwarding the PDF to everybody that you know. This is what's going to win it for us, just this constant beating at the opponent's trunk here, and just hitting them in the arms and waiting for their arms to go down so you can finally get the knockout punch later. And that will come. So what is the 9/11 Truth environment like out there in Chicago? I mean, you mentioned that you're able to get a good number of people interested. Is there any hostility like there was years ago? Has it changed when you speak out to people on the street?
I find mostly, right now we're targeting petition signers, so most of those people are obviously very receptive and very open and willing to help out. The people that I approach on the street, who I have no idea where they stand, a lot of them I find out are just oblivious. They just don't. It's like it's not even on their radar. It's never even something they think about or talk about. Usually, if I get 30 seconds with them, I can pique their interest. I show them a video of Building 7 on my iPhone, and most of them are very interested after that. In fact, I just had a lady the other day say to me, "Why haven't I heard about this?" And I just looked at her and said, "It's a good question." I gave her a copy of the disinformation and sent her on her way. So I think unfortunately, it's as if the people in Chicago are busy working, busy raising families, busy doing what they're doing, and 9/11 is just not a part of their lives. And the good news about that is that I think if we can reach the people, they'll wake up and they'll hopefully get on our side.
Yeah, you're right, and that's kind of the situation all over the country, I find. I find a lot of people are just so wrapped up in their own lives, trying to stay ahead, some cases barely holding their heads above water if they're in a certain socioeconomic class, or if they are in some way wrapped up with the official story, either emotionally or financially. I mean, certainly if you're working for a major company making weapons for the wars, or some company that is invested in the national security state, making the body scanners, for instance, you don't necessarily want to hear that there is anything amiss about the official story. You want to believe the government, you want to believe the nobility of your profession, and that you're, making your bread and butter off of something that is actually making the country a better place. Same thing, too, with soldiers who may have gone off to war in the aftermath of 9/11, thinking that they're striking back for America, that they're defending freedom. They go and lose a leg. Do they want to hear that the official story is false, that the reason they went off to go fight in a war and lost their leg is based off of a lie, that they were deceived? That's not a fun message to hear. And I'm very cognizant of this, and I don't know how you overcome it other than to just reinforce that the truth is the truth. Telling the truth is patriotic, and just because people have been misled in the past doesn't mean they need to keep on being misled. You can change the course and still be a good guy, still be a hero. People may have pursued certain avenues for certain reasons, believing one set of information, but then the information changed. That doesn't mean you're necessarily a bad person. It's just that you weren't aware of something to begin with. So, do you think that 9/11 impacted Chicago in any different way, since there are many similarities between that city and New York, the tall buildings? Do you think there's any kind of difference of that event in the minds of people in Chicago than in maybe small rural areas where they don't have as big of structures as Chicago has?
I would say on the day, definitely. We have the Sears Tower and John Hancock Building, and both pretty tall buildings, 90-something stories. And I remember they were evacuating those buildings. A lot of people were trying to get out of the city. And I have friends that live in the city, and they said it was pretty chaotic on the day of 9/11. But, nothing happened here in terms of, bombs going off or anything like that, or planes crashing in the building. So once the day was over, kind of back to business as usual. And, of course, the immediate cover-up of the truth ensued the day after 9/11, so no one ever really learned about it, I suppose. And it's like I said, it just seems like not many people just are in touch with reality in terms of 9/11 truth.
Now, since you build structures, you build homes, obviously you got to be aware of these things, and I think it's very interesting, the argument that's been put forth that firefighters are unsafe in tall steel frame structures because, according to the new reality that's been presented to us by National Institute of Standards and Technology, random fires and a few thermally expanding beams can push a girder off of its seat and bring the building crashing down on their heads. And, this may not impact local rural areas that don't have giant tall structures, but in Chicago you have the Sears Tower, you have all the other high-rises there. What do you think about that argument and this new reality presented by NIST that random fires can put firefighters' lives in danger if they go and try to fight the fires?
Well, it's just simply nonsense. I mean, these buildings are built with all the safety factors involved. The steel is specifically made to transfer the heat, and because they know that fires are inevitable in high rises. They happen all the time. In fact, I know that several fires happened in the World Trade Center before 9/11, and they still stood. So, I've in the home building business that I'm in, around Chicagoland, there's no land left. You can't just buy an empty piece of property and build a house. So a lot of times what happens is you buy an older home, an existing home, and you tear it down, you build a new one. And I've actually physically done it myself. I've operated the excavator, the equipment to demolish houses. And it's amazing the strength of just wood, just 2x4s and 2x8s and 2x12s, stacked on end. You have to bang on them with this machine before they break, and we're talking about wood. You start adding steel to the mix, and it's structurally made to be so sound that it could never just collapse. Even with fire for hours and hours, steel just does not collapse due to fire. It's just a simple fact. Can't happen.
Well, no, I mean, in such a perfect way, too. I mean, what we should have seen from the Twin Towers, or even in particular Building 7, is that a fire breaks out and it leaves the structure still standing for a long time. Pieces of it may fall away here and there, but overall you should still see a steel skeleton standing there at the end of the day. That's what we have seen historically from high-rise fires. But now we're left with this new reality that is so ridiculous to try to explain off this obvious controlled demolition that doesn't deal with the consequences of this new reality. It's kind of like in courtrooms, whenever you set a judicial precedent, now it affects law forever afterwards because you've set that precedent. It either gets overturned or there's a new interpretation of the law. But we haven't had that here with the very ridiculous explanation that we've been given. Should have changed everything, but no, it's just essentially spackled over this glaring inconsistency with reality on the day of 9/11, and then we were all told to look away and move on. I just think that's absolutely ridiculous. Of course, that's why I do this show every week, and I'm sure you do too. But it's just hard to get people to take a look at that. And most times, though, when they do take a look at it, they end up agreeing with us. So there's people out in Chicago right now who may be listening to you and want to join up. And each local group is different. Some people have different ways they want to be contacted. So if they want to join up with you and help out, how can they do that?
Well, you can contact me through the Architects and Engineers website. I can be reached anytime, and definitely would love to have anyone who's listening drop me a line. I can send you a list of actionable items that we're handing out to people, and I kind of take this from you, Andy. We kind of suggest people that want to get involved. What are you good at? What do you like to do? And can you somehow take that skill and put it towards good use in this movement? Because like I said before, it's the little things that happen every day, and if you're good at writing, you can join the writing team. If you know how to run a website, we need website help. If you're good at getting people to open up their wallets and give money, that's always useful. And so there's just the sky's the limit really on what can be done, and we just need the masses really, I think, is what it boils down to.
Yeah, this is the opportunity to do the right thing for the right reasons, or to do whatever you're really good at for the right reasons. I mean, so many people out there, they want to be a writer. So, their aspirations are, I want to work for the New York Times, or, I want to write a novel and have it published by Penguin Publishing. If that still exists, I don't know. But, one of those major publishing companies, and be rich and famous, and everyone will know my name and all of this. But what good is that? I mean, after you're dead, you don't get to enjoy any of that anymore, right? But if you contribute something to humanity, that lives on into the generations that follow, all right? That impact is like ripples in a pond that just keep on going out. And in this case, it's endless. It's infinite. You can set history back on the right course. And so use your talents for the reason that I believe you were bestowed with them. If you're a good writer, instead of waiting for permission from the establishment to make an impact and begging for their presses to do it, come to AE 9/11 Truth, and we will put your skills to good use for this good cause. If you're an artist, same thing. I mean, what better reason is there than 9/11 truth to get people to try to regain their own freedom? And I've talked about this a lot of times. Freedom is being able to say that 2 + 2 = 4, not 5, because the government tells you to. There's a lot more at stake even than the truth about what happened that day and what happened to the people who died that day. There's the battle for scientific integrity, because if the government can just come in and change physics reality, say that 105 feet of free fall means nothing because they have a political agenda they're trying to push or an official story they're trying to push. In this case, it's a little bit of both. They essentially are saying they control reality. All right, we got to take that back. We got to be able to take back the right to say 2 + 2 = 4, or that 105 feet of free fall is impossible unless you have explosives helping the building down. All right, so there's so much at stake in this fight, and Jim is out there in the front lines doing what he can. So many other great activists are out there. I'm so proud of all you guys and everything you do each day, and you don't even get your proper kudos sometimes, in my opinion, because the world should know about all those great people who are doing what they can. I'm trying to help out as best as I can with this show. So you were talking about some of the actions and the small things done well every day. What is 9/11 truth over the years since its creation, for however long you've been awake to this? What's something that we've done right in getting the word out, and what's something that we can improve into the next year?
Oh, it's a good question. It's interesting because in general, I didn't actually wake up until sometime around 2011, 2010. I'm kind of a late bloomer. But after being in it now for the last 4 years or so, I've talked to quite a few people that were, awake pretty much immediately and or within a few years. And it seems like there was a peak around 2006 where, 2006, 2007, where, it was the movement was growing and it was making lots of strides forward, and then it just kind of petered out, and a lot of people, walked away from the movement, or got fed up with not enough getting done, or just burnt out, or whatever. And now I'm seeing that wave come back around again, and I think this is it. I think this is wave 2. Now, I just recently listened to an interview with Ken, really smart guy. He did something with Richard Gage years and years ago. I can't think of his, Ken Jenkins. And he said back in 2005 that in his opinion, it was going to be at least a decade before we made major movement in this fight. And it's been now a decade. And I think it's kind of interesting. I'm starting to feel that wave surge forward. It was kind of a prophetic statement by Ken Jenkins years ago. And I don't know if we're going to do it on this wave or the next one, but I'm doing everything I can, and I know a lot of other people are like you, and I just can't imagine any other thing in the world right now that's more important than this, because you're talking about the blatant murder of almost 3,000 people right on broad daylight, and for the people that orchestrated it and pulled it off to get away with it, to me, is just unconscionable. And I know a lot of people draw a parallel to the JFK assassination, 9/11. I do see the similarities there. And sometimes I think about what would have happened if in 1965, a few years after the assassination, if there were groups like us who got together and started, exposing the lies of the JFK assassination, and what would have happened if they actually came forward and proved that it was, and where would the world have gone? What direction? And I just can't imagine the things that were happening now in the world would be happening if that would have happened. And so now is our chance. We're getting a second chance to make a difference in the world, because this is a world issue. What happened on 9/11 has created war after war, and I just read recently 174,000 civilians died in Iraq between 2003 and 2015. 174,000 civilians, mostly women and children. And this is a direct result of 9/11. That doesn't count Afghanistan and Libya and Yemen and now Syria and eventually Iran and who knows what else. So, some people kind of scoff off 9/11 truth and say, you guys are idiots or whatever. But the science proves that it is what it is. And the implications are just monumental, and I can't sit by and just not do anything.
Well, you make the comparison to JFK. A lot of people do. I think that is a very apt comparison because of very similar circumstances, in my opinion, even though this show doesn't focus on the JFK stuff. I've speculated on this show before in one of these hypothetical scenarios, these comic book imagination fictional scenarios where let's say that 9/11 had happened in 1982 instead of 2001. Would we have a 9/11 truth movement? Well, with the communication being what it was back then, or if 9/11 had happened even before that, how would people have shared this information so fast? And what you're seeing is a quickening of the skepticism on events like this. I don't know how long it took for people in the JFK crime to start questioning that. I don't think there really was ever a JFK truth movement, an actual movement. There were people out there writing books on it and openly questioning it, Jim Garrison, but I don't think there was an actual organized body like AE 9/11 Truth that existed at the time. Now with 9/11, we had the user-created content. I don't even just attribute it to the internet because, if it had just been the corporate media controlling the internet, we would have just gotten the computer version of what we were seeing on the daily news. What we had instead was YouTube. We had blogs. We had people sharing information with each other. MySpace, that was a big one. People able to pass around different thoughts and observations and videos that they found and network with each other, build off of each other's work. And so I think that is what is leading to all of this awakening happening right now. And here we are 14 years later. We're still trying to push this really big boulder up the hill, as Richard Gage describes it. But we're doing a really good job with it. And you're noticing that now when a new event happens, whether or not there are questions surrounding it, people are looking for the secret motives behind it. People are looking at every single detail. They're jumping on each little detail as it is released by the news and analyzing whether or not we're getting the real story on it. And I think that's a good thing. Obviously, the press doesn't like it. Obviously, our government officials don't like it because they don't like anybody questioning what they do. That's their problem, though. I think a more vigilant public is a safer public. So at the very least, we are protecting America from another 9/11 style event and a cover-up like the controlled demolitions of those buildings, because people are looking for it now. People are on every single event looking for the hidden hand or the evidence that's going to be put under lock and key later on. So that's a good thing. I mean, what do you think about that three-dimensional impact of our activism, the fact that we've made the public more vigilant?
I think that 9/11 truth is like a one-way door. I've heard a lot of people say this, and I totally agree. And once you go through that door and you get it, it's almost like it becomes a calling. It becomes a mission. And I tell this to my friends all the time. They're like, "Why do you care? Why do you feel so like you have to do something?" And what were you doing when you discovered this information? I said, the information found me. I wasn't searching for this information. I wasn't a conspiracy theorist, perusing the internet, trying to find the latest conspiracy. Somehow this information found me. And I love my country. I hope to think I'm a good person. And knowing what I know about 9/11 and the fact it was a murder of, almost 3,000 people, I can't sit by on my hands and do nothing and let the people that did it get away with it. And so I kind of feel like that's for most people that wake up to the truth. They wake up to the evidence that AE 9/11 Truth puts out. And once you realize that it was a psyop to get us into wars and take away more of our civil liberties, it's kind of like, well, you better take action. The boat is sinking, and you better start bailing water, or else, you're going to go down with the ship. So, fortunately, we have a lot of really intelligent people on our side that, great authors and great videographers and people like Richard Gage who traveling the world and doing his presentations. And unfortunately, a lot of times he speaks, preaching to the choir, and it's hard to get non-believers to come and see the talks. But I know that Richard has an incredible turnover rate where the people that started out not believing typically end up believing afterwards. So, it's really, if you have an open mind and you're not completely steeped in the official narrative and cognitive dissonance, once you see the truth and see the physical evidence that's irrefutable, most people are willing to do what they can to help out.
Well, you made mention earlier about how Ken Jenkins, I think you said, was saying that it would take about 10 years for us to get any headway. I wonder why he said that. I can't attribute what his rationale was behind that, but my own rationale behind that is that sometimes it just takes being lied to so much for people to wake up. I've known people who have been in relationships where their partner is lying to them the entire time, using them, playing them, and maybe having other relationships with other people, and everybody is telling them about it, telling them what must be going on behind the scenes, and everybody sees it except that person who is closest to it. Up until they get sick of being lied to, and then their whole mentality changes. There's a shift in their brain, and they liberate themselves. They don't care anymore. They're willing to just tell the truth and deal with it. And in our case, I think that a lot of people who were attracted to this are the type of people who are not emotionally involved with the government or the official story, people who have less to lose from telling the truth. And the people closest to it, people in government, people, military folks, people who are in media, they're closer to it, and they may not see what's right in front of them until enough lies come out, that they can break that cognitive dissonance. I think there's so many similarities with that, and that might be why it takes a decade or so, or even more so in our case, for people to essentially embrace the truth, to recognize that it liberates them from this lie. And even though it's something that we have to deal with now, once we acknowledge it, at least we can get that weight off of our shoulders. We can take that deep breath and face the future more courageously and unbound by protecting a lie. This is something that I ask a lot of people. I asked the last guest that I had on this show. I'm going to ask you now. What keeps you going? What really motivates you and keeps you out there doing what you do for AE 9/11 Truth?
Well, this may sound kind of strange, but it's the first thing I think about when I wake up. It's the first thing I think about before I go to sleep at night. And not only those 2 moments of the day, it's most every other moment of every day I'm thinking about it. So, I've had some struggles in my career when I first found out about 9/11 Truth, I wanted to just quit my job and just, focus on this 100%. But obviously, you have to pay the bills and eat, and so I couldn't do that. But that's what keeps me going, is just the fact that I know how important it is. And the setbacks that I get, unfortunately, are the closest people to me. My best friends that I grew up with are very smart people, and they are willing to look at the information. And that hurts me the most, because these are guys that are like brothers to me, and I feel like in a way they're holding me back, because I'm spending more time trying to explain it to them so I can get their permission to go off and tell the rest of the world. And it's kind of an interesting situation, but I'm just constantly motivated to get this truth out there, because I just realize, like I said before, it affects the whole world. It's not just the United States, it's not just New York City, it's not just the people that died and their families in 9/11. It's the whole world. And if this lie continues to be buried, and the foreign policy that we continue to exemplify around the world continues, then it's never going to change for the better, and that's what I'd love to see, is change for the better.
Jim Swartz, thank you so much for coming on 9/11 Freefall.
Andy, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
This program's on every Thursday night on No Lies Radio at 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific. You can also download MP3s of the show from the Internet Archive by going to 911freefall.com. This is Andy Steele saying have a great week and Merry Christmas.